Before soul food became the heartwarming family classic we know today, it started as a completely different movie with a totally different title, broadcast on Milwaukee cable access. The 1997 hit featured improvised curse words that shocked even the cast, a food stylist who was literally taste tested for the job, and three major stars who all dated the same Fresh Prince. From boxers worn under towels to failed James Brown licensing deals, these bizarre behind-the-scenes stories reveal just how many surprising secrets went into cooking up this beloved film. Fact 1. Original cable access origins. Before soul food became the beloved 1997 blockbuster that touched millions of hearts, it started as something completely different in the most humble way imaginable. The very first version of this story wasn't called soul food at all, but rather Spice of Life. And it wasn't shown in movie theaters across America or even on a major television network. Instead, director George Tillman Jr.'s original vision made its debut on a local cable access channel in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where only a small community of viewers could tune in to watch. Cable access television was the grassroots platform of the 1990s, where local filmmakers, community activists, and aspiring creators could broadcast their content without the massive budgets and studio backing that major productions required. These channels were often filled with local government meetings, community announcements, and amateur productions that served specific neighborhoods or cities. For Tillman, this Milwaukee cable access channel became his testing ground for a story that would eventually grow into something much larger. The transition from Spice of Life to soul food represents one of the most dramatic transformations in film history, going from a local cable access production to a major studio film starring Vanessa Williams, Vivica Fox, and Nia Long. While the exact details of what Spice of Life contained compared to the final soul food movie remain somewhat mysterious, the fact that Tillman was able to take this small-scale local production and develop it into a film that would gross over $43 million at the box office shows just how powerful his original concept was. The Milwaukee cable access version served as the foundation for what would become a cultural touchstone that celebrated African American family traditions and the power of food to bring people together during difficult times. Fact 2. The great food audition process. Most movie directors audition actors by having them read lines or perform scenes. But George Tillman Jr. took a completely different approach when it came to hiring the food stylist for soul food. Instead of simply looking at portfolios or conducting traditional interviews, Tillman decided that the only way to find the right person for this crucial role was to actually taste their cooking, turning the hiring process into what was essentially a culinary competition. Tillman auditioned 3 different candidates for the position of chef and food stylist. But he didn't just sit down and talk with them about their experience or look at photographs of their previous work. He required each potential hire to actually prepare food for him, because he understood that soul food wasn't just any movie where food happened to appear on screen. This was a film where the meals themselves were central characters, representing love, tradition, and family bonds, so the food had to be absolutely authentic and delicious. The winner of this unusual taste test was Freddie Petros, a cook from Chicago's West Side, and Tillman's reason for choosing her was surprisingly personal and emotional. He didn't select her because she had the most impressive resume or the fanciest techniques, but because her cooking reminded him exactly of his own grandmother's style and flavors. Tillman later explained that Petros cooked in the same style and in the same way as his grandmother, making her food feel familiar and authentic to him. The director even went so far as to visit Petros at her own home, where he watched her cook in her personal kitchen and then sat down at her family table to share a meal, just like he was one of her own family members. This experience convinced him that Petros brought something special to her cooking that went beyond just technical skill, something he described as an added spirituality that would be perfect for bringing the Joseph family's Sunday dinners to life on screen. Fact 3. Fresh Prince love, triangle reunion. The 3 sisters at the heart of soul food shared more than just incredible on-screen chemistry as siblings, because Vanessa Williams, Vivica Fox, and Nia Long had all previously appeared on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as romantic interests for Will Smith's character, creating an unintentional reunion that nobody involved in the casting process seems to have planned or even noticed at the time. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which ran from 1990 to 1996, featured Will Smith's character dating various women throughout the series, and all three of these future soul food stars had memorable roles as his love interests during different episodes and seasons. Each actress brought a completely different energy and personality to their respective Fresh Prince characters, showcasing the range that would later make them perfect for playing three very different sisters in the Joseph family. What makes this connection even more interesting is that these weren't just brief cameo appearances or single-episode guest spots, but rather significant roles that Fresh Prince fans would have remembered. The fact that casting directors for Soul Food ended up choosing three actresses who had all shared romantic scenes with the same leading man on one of the most popular sitcoms of the 1990s seems like an incredible coincidence, especially since their characters in Soul Food have such a believable and natural sisterly dynamic. This Fresh Prince connection adds an extra layer of entertainment for viewers who catch the reference, because instead of seeing these actresses compete for the same man's attention like they did on the sitcom, Soul Food presents them as a tight-knit family of sisters who support each other through various challenges and conflicts. The transition from playing rivals for Will Smith's affection to portraying loving siblings who share Sunday dinners and family secrets demonstrates the versatility of all three performers and creates an amusing bit of television history that connects two very different but equally beloved projects. Fact 4. Improvised explosive moment goes viral. One of the most memorable and shocking moments in Soul Food happened completely by accident, when Vanessa Williams delivered a furious outburst that wasn't in the original script and caught every single person on set completely off guard. During the intense family confrontation scene, Williams was supposed to express her character Terry's anger about discovering her husband's affair, but instead of sticking to the written dialogue, she spontaneously shouted, "The family F-worded my husband," using the actual profanity in a moment of raw, unscripted emotion. What makes this moment even more remarkable is that Williams had given no warning to her fellow actors, the director, or anyone else involved in filming that she was planning to deviate from the script in such a dramatic way. The other cast members were expecting to hear whatever lines had been rehearsed during preparation. So when Williams suddenly unleashed this explosive and very adult language, their shocked facial expressions and stunned reactions were completely genuine and unplanned. This unscripted moment created what film experts call enforced method acting, where the surprise was so real that it actually improved the authenticity of the scene rather than ruining it. The other actors didn't have time to think about how their characters should react or what their facial expressions should look like, because they were genuinely startled by what Williams had just said, creating a level of natural response that would have been nearly impossible to achieve through traditional acting techniques. Director George Tillman Jr. and the editing team clearly recognized that this improvised moment was too powerful and authentic to cut from the final version of the movie, so they kept Williams's unscripted outburst and all of the genuine shock reactions from the other cast members. This decision turned what could have been a simple mistake or departure from the script into one of the most emotionally intense and memorable scenes in the entire film. Fact 5. Double-duty Chicago filming schedule. Vanessa Williams found herself in the unusual position of working on two major film productions at exactly the same time during 1997, juggling her roles in both Soul Food and Hoodlum by switching between the two Chicago-based movie sets on alternating days. This demanding schedule required incredible focus and energy, as Williams had to mentally shift between playing two completely different characters while maintaining her performance quality on both projects. Hoodlum was a crime drama starring Lawrence Fishburne and Tim Roth that told the story of notorious Harlem gangster Bumpy Johnson during the 1930s, a much darker and grittier film than the family-centered Soul Food. Williams played a supporting role in Hoodlum, while simultaneously taking on the lead role of Terry Joseph in Soul Food, meaning she had to switch between portraying a character in a violent period crime story and then transform into a modern-day lawyer dealing with family drama and personal relationships. The fact that both productions were filming in Chicago at the same time was purely coincidental, but it created a logistical challenge that most actors never have to face during their careers. Williams had to keep track of 2 different scripts, 2 sets of character motivations, 2 different wardrobes, and 2 completely separate storylines, while working with 2 different directors and cast members who had no connection to each other. This demanding double schedule also meant that Williams was essentially working non-stop during the filming period, with very little time for rest or preparation between switching from one character to another. The physical and mental demands of this situation would have been exhausting for any performer, but Williams managed to deliver strong performances in both films without either production suffering from her divided attention. Both movies were released in 1997 and became successful projects that showcased different aspects of Williams' acting range and versatility. Fact 6. Whitney Houston almost played Terry. The role of Terry Joseph, the successful lawyer and eldest sister in Soul Food, almost went to 2 completely different actresses who would have brought entirely different energies to the character and changed the entire feel of the movie. Both Whitney Houston and Halle Berry were seriously considered for this crucial role during the casting process, before the filmmakers ultimately decided to give the part to Vanessa Williams. Whitney Houston was at the height of her fame in 1997, having just starred in The Bodyguard and Waiting to Exhale, which proved she could handle both dramatic acting and musical performances on the big screen. Her involvement in Soul Food would have brought a different kind of star power to the project, considering her massive popularity as both a singer and actress during that time period. Houston's casting would have also created an interesting dynamic, since her powerful vocal abilities and commanding screen presence might have overshadowed some of the other family members' storylines. Halle Berry was also under serious consideration for the role of Terry, and her casting would have brought a different type of dramatic intensity to the character. Berry was already establishing herself as a serious dramatic actress during the mid-1990s, and her version of Terry might have been more vulnerable or emotionally complex than the strong-willed, sometimes harsh character that Williams ultimately created. The decision to cast Vanessa Williams instead of these 2 major stars ultimately shaped the entire tone and balance of Soul Food in ways that might not be immediately obvious to viewers. Williams brought a specific kind of controlled intensity and sharp intelligence to Terry that perfectly balanced the warmth of Vivica Fox and the spirited energy of Nia Long, creating a family dynamic that felt authentic and realistic, rather than dominated by one particular star's personality or screen presence. Fact 7. Vivica Fox's casting consolation prize. Vivica Fox originally walked into her Soul Food audition hoping to land the role of Terry Joseph, the sharp-tongued lawyer and eldest sister, but her audition was so compelling and memorable that the casting directors decided to do something unusual instead of simply rejecting her for that particular part. Rather than letting Fox walk away empty-handed when they chose someone else for Terry, the filmmakers were so impressed with her performance and screen presence that they essentially created a completely different role specifically designed around her talents and personality. This decision led to the creation of Maxine Joseph, the middle sister who becomes one of the most beloved and complex characters in the entire movie. Instead of being disappointed about not getting the role she originally wanted, Fox ended up with a character that was arguably better suited to her natural acting style and allowed her to showcase a wider range of emotions and personality traits throughout the film. Maxine turned out to be the perfect vehicle for Fox's ability to balance humor with drama, strength with vulnerability, and family loyalty with personal struggles. The character deals with complicated relationships, financial pressures, and the challenge of being caught between her 2 sisters while trying to maintain her own identity and marriage, giving Fox plenty of material to work with as an actress. What makes this casting story even more interesting is that the role of Maxine wasn't just thrown together quickly to accommodate Fox, but rather was developed into one of the most well-rounded and essential characters in the story. Maxine serves as the emotional heart of many scenes and provides crucial connections between the other family members, proving that sometimes not getting the role you auditioned for can lead to something even better. This behind-the-scenes decision ultimately enriched the entire movie by adding another layer of family dynamics that might not have existed otherwise. Fact 8. Boxers under the towel blooper. During one of the more intense confrontational scenes in Soul Food, a wardrobe mistake slipped past the entire production team and made it into the final version of the movie that audiences saw in theaters. When Bird's co-workers attack Lem as he's coming out of the bathroom, Mekhi Phifer's character is supposed to be wearing only a towel around his waist. But if you look carefully during the scene, you can clearly see that he's actually wearing boxers underneath the towel. This continuity error occurs during a moment when the scene is supposed to show Lem in a vulnerable and embarrassing situation, being confronted by his wife's colleagues while he's not properly dressed. The whole point of the scene is to create tension and awkwardness around the fact that Lem is caught off guard and not fully clothed, which makes the visible boxers particularly problematic from a storytelling perspective. The mistake is especially noticeable because the camera angles and lighting in the scene don't do anything to hide the boxers, suggesting that nobody involved in filming or editing the movie caught this error during the production process. Film crews usually have script supervisors and continuity experts whose job is to catch exactly these kinds of mistakes before they end up in the finished movie. But somehow this particular blooper made it through all the layers of review and quality control. What makes this error even more amusing for sharp-eyed viewers is that it's the kind of mistake that becomes impossible to unsee once you notice it, turning what's supposed to be a dramatic moment into an unintentional source of humor. The boxers are visible enough that many fans have pointed out this continuity problem over the years, making it one of those movie mistakes that develops its own following among people who enjoy spotting production errors in popular films. Fact 9. James Brown licensing failure. One of the most frustrating behind-the-scenes challenges that the Soul Food production team faced had nothing to do with acting, directing, or filming, but rather with the complicated world of music licensing that can make or break a director's creative vision. During the bar scene featuring Lem, director George Tillman Jr. had originally planned to use a James Brown song to enhance the mood and atmosphere of the moment. But Fox Studios was unable to secure the legal rights to use the music, forcing the filmmakers to completely change their soundtrack plans for that particular scene. Music licensing for movies involves negotiating with record labels, publishing companies, and sometimes the artists themselves to get permission to use existing songs in films, and these negotiations can be extremely expensive and time-consuming. James Brown, known as the Godfather of Soul, had an extensive catalog of influential and recognizable hits that would have been perfect for a movie celebrating African-American culture and family traditions, but the legal and financial obstacles proved too difficult for the production to overcome. This setback meant that the music supervisors and editors had to scramble to find alternative songs that would work just as well for the scene without creating legal problems or budget overruns. The process of replacing planned music during post-production can be particularly challenging because the original song choice often influences how scenes are edited, paced, and structured. So changing the music can require additional work to make everything flow properly. While viewers will never know exactly how the bar scene would have looked and felt with James Brown's music playing in the background, this licensing failure demonstrates how many creative decisions in filmmaking are ultimately determined by business considerations rather than artistic preferences. The final version of the scene still works effectively with whatever music was chosen as the replacement, but it represents one of those what-if moments that show how different the movie might have been under different circumstances. Fact 10. Milestone supergroup reality. The fictional R&B group called Milestone that appears in Soul Food wasn't actually fictional at all, but rather a legitimate supergroup made up of some of the biggest names in 1990s R&B music who came together specifically for this movie project. What audiences saw on screen was essentially a musical dream team disguised as a made-up band. Featuring Casey and JoJo from the hugely popular group Jodeci, along with Kenneth "Babyface" Edmonds and his two brothers Kevin and Melvin Edmonds. who were members of the successful R&B group After 7. This collaboration brought together artists who were already major stars in their own right, creating a supergroup that had more combined talent and industry success than many real bands that spend years trying to make it in the music business. K-Psy and JoJo were known for their powerful vocals and had already achieved massive success with Jodeci, one of the most influential R&B groups of the early 1990s, while Babyface was already a legendary producer and songwriter who had worked with Whitney Houston, Toni Braxton, and countless other major artists. The Edmonds brothers brought additional credibility to Milestone through their work with After 7, which had produced several hit songs and albums during the late 1980s and early 1990s. Having all of these established artists come together to create music for a fictional band within the movie added an extra layer of authenticity to the Soul Food soundtrack and the character of Miles, who was trying to make it as a musician. The creation of Milestone served the story perfectly, because the character Miles needed to be part of a believable R&B group that could realistically be trying to get a record deal, and having actual R&B superstars play the other band members made Miles's musical aspirations seem much more credible and professional than if the filmmakers had used unknown actors pretending to be musicians. Fact 11. Brandon Hammond's age deception. Brandon Hammond delivered one of the most emotionally mature and sophisticated child performances in 1990s cinema, but what audiences didn't realize at the time was that he was actually older than the character he was portraying, which helped explain his remarkable ability to handle such complex dramatic material. Hammond was 13 years old when filming began in 1997, but his character Ahmad was written as an 11-year-old boy, creating a 2-year age gap that gave the young actor additional life experience and emotional development to draw from during his performance. This age difference becomes particularly significant when you consider the heavy dramatic content that Ahmad had to navigate throughout the movie, including dealing with his grandmother's illness and death, witnessing family conflicts and betrayals, and ultimately taking on the responsibility of trying to bring his fractured family back together. An actual 11-year-old might have struggled with the emotional complexity and psychological depth required for these scenes, but Hammond's extra 2 years of maturity allowed him to understand and portray these challenging situations with remarkable authenticity. Hammond's performance was so